All right, the Nomad defense frames, okay, 2 years later. So if you haven't been living under a rock, you probably have seen the aftermarket Glock frames, whether it's a Polymer 80, whether it's a Nomad, a Shadow System, Timberwolf from Lone Wolf, and a couple of others that have kind of come up and maybe aren't around anymore. I don't know, I haven't looked into them. But there have been several different companies that have come out with an aftermarket frame. Nomad was just the first one to bring out a Gen 4 version, where others are still kind of in the Gen 3, and some have moved into the Gen 4, like Shadow Systems, which is surprisingly familiar to the Nomad frame. Now they come in a variety of types. You have like PSA, Palmetto State, that actually now has the Dagger, which is a 100% Gen 3 Glock clone. Some of them are do-it-yourself, like the Polymer 80s, and ones like the Nomad are serialized frames that you just get your preferred parts and put them in. Being that it is a Gen 4 based on the 19 locking block, it is also compatible with Gen 5 stuff, because that is a Gen 5 Glock 45 slide that's on this one. So as long as it's the right slide, it's gonna fit on there because it's based off the same locking block. So after 2 years of owning this thing and a couple of thousand rounds through that frame, is it any better? Now angles do matter, that much I can assure you. Now on a Glock frame, it's a very aggressive grip angle, and when pressing that thing out, generally your muzzle is going to be very high. You have to really kind of force down. And that is where the Nomad and a couple of others that are in the aftermarket frame business have kind of excelled, because they have reduced that grip angle and given you a more natural and ergonomic, at least for me and pretty much everybody I talk to, angle to work with when you are actually using this thing out there on the range. We're going to take a good solid look at the inside of this thing, talk about any changes that may have rolled out, and of course the stuff that is on there, because they've got some different add-ons that you can go with. If this is your first time here, go ahead and get subbed up, get belled up, turn the notifications all on down there, see if it does anything, because some people get them, some people don't. I guess that's just the way it works. If you like anything that's going on here, definitely give the video a like. And of course, if you're interested in anything point in time, I'll leave some links down below. Check the first link in the description. It'll take you to where that build list is. We're gonna go ahead and get into all of the nitty gritty on this Nomad defense right now. All right, let's jump into the Nomad defense frame right here. Like I said, the first Gen 4 frame for the Glock setup. So you can get this in a couple of different ways. It comes in flat dark earth, black, with or without the magwell right here. I rather like the magwell. So let's go ahead and take this light off real quick, and we're gonna talk about everything that goes into this frame. And let's just talk about the frame. In fact, let's just break it down, because the slide doesn't come with it. This is a build it yourself kind of thing, or at least assemble it yourself kind of thing. So as far as the frame goes, magwell is up to you. Without the magwell, there is a little bit of a pinky ledge and kind of a flare like the Gen 5 stuff, but much more minimal. So as you can see, the magwell is going to give you way more surface area. It's all aluminum, replaces the back strap. It mirrors the medium size back strap. The texture on there is kind of that cotton candy look, at least that's what the stipplers call it. You got lines across the front, plenty of grip to get a hold of. And then on the back, you can see you got a great section of beaver tail, which has been extended to help control that recoil impulse. Up in here, the mag release has been sectioned in quite a bit. That way you don't need an extended mag release, because you can see just how long that one is right there. That's an aftermarket one that's meant to go in a Glock factory frame, when in all reality, the normal non-extended version would be perfect because of how this depression is. They've also put nice areas up in there so you don't accidentally activate your slide stop slide release. Even though I have an extended one, it's not been a problem. Trigger guard on here looks much more like an M&P than it does a normal Glock. And then you've got your single pick sized rail right there. So that's a 1913 size, but it's still the single slot. And then of course you can reverse the magazine release right there as well. And then one of the best things up here is on the Nomad, you can see the extended ledge right there on both sides. So whether you're right or left-handed, you've got an amazing edge to get your thumb on to really help control that recoil impulse. The frame is made almost exactly out of what the Glock polymer stuff is. It's so similar, you can barely tell the difference. It's based off of the Gen 4 19 locking block, and it has every spot that's needed in every way for every Glock part. So let's talk about a couple of things you need to know before you get one of these and start putting it together. One of the first things you're going to know is, or need to know is, they have made a slight change to the rear section right here where the trigger bar is going to contact the back of that frame. This is one of the very first Nomad frames that was ever made. I think I got one of the first 100 that was ever made. Some of the aftermarket trigger bars were a little too tight up in this area right here, so they actually removed a slight amount of material in the more recent versions right here. So you can fit all of the aftermarket triggers, like say something like the Agency, which this Agency trigger has been a problem child, and this is the only frame it's actually ever functioned worth anything in. All of the other frames, it caused a bunch of problems. For some odd reason, this one runs like a champ. So only other thing you're gonna really wanna pay attention to when it comes to these frames or building any aftermarket frame is you can see how these tabs right here are kind of bent inward. That happened because I got an aftermarket slide that was very cheaply made, and up in the front section right here, it was not milled out appropriately. It was way too far back here. They did not remove enough material. As you can imagine, upon using it out on the range, it kind of felt a little weird. And the reason it felt weird is because all that additional material was making contact right here. And I didn't notice it until I used that slide on something else, another Polymer 80, and then I realized it had damaged those, and I came back and looked at this and realized it had damaged my Nomad frame. So that is not going to happen with factory frames, or excuse me, factory slides. This will happen if you get a poorly made aftermarket slide, which unfortunately that one was. So talking about what fits this, even though this is a Gen 4, your Gen 3, Gen 4, and Gen 5 19 or 45 slides will fit on here because it's all based off of the same locking block. So you can tell I'm not lying to you right there, 45. So you can see everything works as it should. This is the same setup that I was using out on the range. The only difference in this one is the Gen 3 and 4, 17 and 19 had different locking blocks from each other. The Gen 5 has the 19 locking block, which is why you can do that. All in all, a very cool setup, and they might have the full size out really soon. My understanding is they have been working on that. So let's talk about the benefits of something like this, why you would do this, who this is for, and of course, that cost, right after we take one last look at how nice that thing is. Just a sleek, kind of like TIE fighter pilot looking thing right there. All right, let's go ahead and talk about all that stuff, wrap this up. Not a bad setup right there. A lot of improvements over the Gen 3, Gen 4 Glock frame out of the factory. But who is this for? How much does this cost? Is it really beneficial? All that stuff that we are interested in, want to know now that we've got some long-term testing done on this and a bunch of rounds through it. There are some great benefits to this, and that is angles. Like I said, angles matter. Ergonomically, this thing is far more correct for you than a standard Glock frame with that less aggressive angle. You've got that extended beaver tail. You've got those nice ledges to get your thumb and your pointer finger on, or your other thumb if you're wrong-handed or left-handed. So there's some really good stuff going on here. Grip texture is pretty solid. You've got the ability to get that mag well. It is just overall very well done. And of course, the reliability and durability you're going to get out of those Glock factory parts, which is what that is absolutely made for. Now, the one other big thing on this is you get to do it how you want it. It's like Burger King. It's not like buying a factory Glock and then you got to take everything, get it milled or machined and coated or whatever you want to do, change all the parts out. You can do that up front with this thing instead of kind of doubling up on a little bit of that spending. And of course, for those of us that have messed things up in the past, there's no drilling, there's no sanding. You just buy the frame and you put your parts in. It's pretty easy. It's like, you know, adult Legos, Tinker Toys, whatever you want to call it. Now, if there is one holdback on these, Glock parts are really tough to get right now. With everything that's been going on the past couple of years, my understanding is Glock is not even selling current production parts outside of a full pistol to the civilian market. They are only selling those as full pistols or selling them to government agencies for replacement parts for service pistols. That's a hard pill to swallow because that really puts you in the market of having to try and find aftermarket Glock parts kits, which generally aren't the best. So if you choose to go down this route, find a factory Glock parts kit if you can. Now the price, if you are interested in building yourself a bad boy like that, is gonna be 200 bucks for the frame or $269 with the frame and the magwell. So you can buy the magwell separately after the fact, but it's like 79 bucks instead of 69. So if you buy it together, you save $10, big deal. If you don't think you want the magwell, wait on it, you can try it out later. There is that little integrated kind of flare in the frame of this, kind of like the Gen 5 Glocks, not quite as big. So that magwell is definitely nice because for bigger hands, it keeps your pinky up out of the magwell area. It also works with almost every mag extension, at least that I know, from Terran, Tyrant, Barracuda. It works with a ton of magazine extensions. So you're generally going to be all right there. Of course, I haven't been able to test every single magazine extension, so I can't say they all work. Now, who is it for and why would you do something like this? Why would you build the abomination that didn't come out of Gaston's factory himself? Why? Because Glock angles suck, even though Glock pistols are pretty good, and you get to have it your way. Build it the way you want, with the parts you want, the trigger, the striker, the barrel, everything right off the bat the way you want it, so you're not wasting money buying a full Glock pistol and then having to buy all kinds of aftermarket parts. Yeah, you could probably sell your factory stuff, but generally you're not going to get a lot of money out of it, except for right now because you really can't get factory parts. May be beneficial, but these are really for the person who wants cleaner angles and the ability to build from the ground up what they want. Fucked it up. Can't count. And one last thing about that sweet little fella that just looks good. Thing just looks clean. Reliability, performance, all that stuff that we really want to know at the end of the day when we are building something like this. So the only problems I have ever had with generally any aftermarket frame like this, if I used factory parts, was typically ammo related or on the polymer 80s where it needed additional sanding. None of that is the case here because this frame is fully finished and based off the factory locking block. The only issue that I've ever had was related to some weak loaded ammo that I got that just was so bad, some of it didn't even go off when the primer was struck. And then the other ones were so weak that it just like barely ran. So it has been an absolutely awesome frame. Now that frame was given to me like 2 years ago from Nomad Defense. It was one of the very early generation ones. They have made a couple of small inline changes as far as opening up the area for that trigger inside like we talked about. Minute changes, didn't change the function at all, but for one of the first models that came out, literally one of the first ones that rolled off the floor, I think it was one of the first like 100, it's been a tank, it's done everything I would expect it to do, and I've not had any issues. Well, that is what I have for you all today. Make sure you guys get subbed up, get belled up, turn the notifications on, give the video a like if you dig this thing or anything else that is going on here. I'll leave those links down below. Huge thank you to all of my Patreons. You guys are awesome. And of course, Shall Not Comply for handling all of the channel swag. I'll put like a picture of a shirt up here. Ton of stuff over there. They're handling guns and gadgets. They're handling Paul Harrell, the Gun Collective, Johnny B, Reno May, a bunch of people. And it's cool to work with people that are in the industry and super pro 2A. Well, you guys get out there on the range and have some fun. And remember, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. And I will see you guys on the next one.